Let's have a look at the highlights, though, from this race, and have a look on the inside here, out of fourth. He ducks down the inside there, and Taunton puts the nose in of the red machine, and he's right behind Studdard. Now, that was the start of his aggressive start to this race, wasn't it, where he just made that position down. He didn't wait too long. There's plenty going on down the back. Donaldson here in the 111 entry as well. And there was a couple of moments Goodacre didn't he? Actually watched Donaldson at one stage through this race where Donaldson spun out. So he was in the fight there for a while, but it was these three. This was the pack where we saw a lot of movement, wasn't it? It was Studdard was leading to start with Taunton right behind and Hollinger, and then they would battle that out throughout.
Yeah, we saw the off-track excursion for Leithhead, and this is the rejoin in question. So it sounds like there was a little bit of contact at some point there, and that was the reason why the innocent John Crossing had to bring his car into the lane.
Oh, there it is.
So it was actually a lap later that incident has occurred. We didn't see that until now. So it was quite a substantial hit in the side of the machine.
There we can see why there's a little bit of damage to that front suspension. This was the battle, though, that carried on from the second half of the race, wasn't it? Where we saw John Hollinger all over the back of Studdard, and he was just looking for that moment. I feel like the tyres and the brakes, he may have pushed him a little bit too hard there, and he just had to have a little bit of a rest, and we saw it in the closing laps of the race that he would have another go at trying to make that overtake attempt, but Danny Studdard managed to hold him out and get on the third step of the podium here for race number one. But look at this car, beautifully presented. The local search entry of Jeff Emery. It led from start to finish. It is looking fast, and it was fast.
Yeah, certainly was. But Taunton was mentioning in mid-race, but let's see what those two have to show when they start on the front row of the grid for the race later on this afternoon. Out in front, though, Jeff Emery took off into the distance and took the victory by 2.7 seconds. A great performance from him. He'll be looking to replicate that later on this afternoon for race number 2 of the Australian Innovation Race Cars.
Now let's have a look at some of the highlights, though, of this race number 1 for the TFH Hire Legend Cars. And well, Hogan got a nice start, didn't he really? And Pring, he had nothing to do except just pull him behind in second.
Yeah, he still tried to show him a few moves, but not really able to affect any real race-winning chances there. I have to say, Thomas, he started from third, he finished in third, but he definitely had his hands full out there.
Yeah, you had to watch out. Now, this is the big moment at the back of the field, wasn't it, where we saw Holder get together with Hamish McCluskey out of New South Wales, and we thought for a moment that might have brought out the safety car, but they managed to get those cars apart.
Asker Sendall started from fourth row with our onboards here, and it's a real run up the hill through that first left-right complex. More action from Thomas out there.
You have a look at him, Aidan Williams there in the green and gold machine right behind him. He was having a good look there for a moment. A bit later on, we saw Roy Hammett from South Australia just have a moment on his own. Didn't look like there was anything going on there. This is the big spin though in the background, wasn't it?
Happened in the dying stages of this 10-minute race and wasn't able to get the car restarted and off track under its own power.
That was unfortunate. It might have brought that took us all the way, I suppose, to that checkered flag there in the end for the TFH Hire Legend Cars. Great to see 36 competitors here this weekend. I'm going to say it's the largest field we've seen since last year. I mean, we commonly saw high 20s and maybe a couple of low 30s there where they are, but a great start to the 2025 season.
Here we are then, the highlights. Neither of the front two got away particularly well, but they did get away better than the Lotus Elise towards the tail of the field. It was action-packed down at turn 1. Sims had a lock-up, ran wide, and that allowed Maloof through. So Maloof at one stage was up to position number 2. He even had a dive once Sims got back through. He dove back up the inside down at turn number 7, but couldn't hold on. These was the problems for Corey Gillett out there. It was not particularly looking good under brakes. There's a great fight in the production cars.
Yeah, you can see Natoli there down the inside of the big HSV of the Kavanagh Electrics Holt car, and that's I suppose the nimbleness of that car. It's light, you can really get those bigger cars under brakes. Now Sims made it all the way to the front, had this massive moment where he got 2 wheels out on the left hand side going into 7, where we've seen so many cars go off, spun the car out and lost that position. Now he got back into second position at that point, but then there was another excursion here at the end of 1 where I think the tyres by now, they're screaming, please stop torturing me at that point there, and we saw Edwards get by. Maloof had another moment there, and Saint got past him as well. So Maloof just sliding the car around there. As he went back on track, I think the burnouts probably didn't help his tyre life at the moment there.
Yeah.
He's just struggling. He's really strong in those first 4 or 5 laps of the race, and have a look at the car. He just slid out there. He wasn't even going particularly fast at that point, but he'll be scooping a lot of dirt under there. They've already had to make some running repairs to that splitter, so he'll need to try and minimise those off-track excursions at the moment.
Yeah, he's got the pace for top 3, there's no doubt about it, but a few too many errors in that one meant that he finished down in 5th. But out in front, Tracy did not put a foot wrong and took the victory by 13 seconds ahead of Sims. A dominant display in race number 1 of the weekend and the season in Australian Super Tintops.
This race had several lead changes, and the front row guys weren't really challenged, but it was the mid-pack scraps that were on from the outset, and a couple of lucky spins during this race.
So there at the back of the shot, there was a little bit of contact. It was, I think, Ethan Fitzgerald or Tabitha Ambrose turning the number 14 around, but then it was the front 2 that were fighting away at the front of the field. Fawcett in the number 23, the black and blue machine, and Kobe Williams in the really nice liveried ACMF machine, fighting at the front.
Razor high down the inside here of the 48 at turn number 1 of Jamie Rowe. This was the second moment then for Fawcett. I thought he was gone when he climbed the curb there, got the tummy on the top of the curb, and he tempted fate on several occasions here at turn number 7. And the relentless Kobe Williams just wouldn't let him go. Then this one, we thought just the one car had went off, then two more went off in the distance. Crazy stuff. We thought there might have been some fluid down there, but it was just guys pushing really hard down there.
Yeah, it was a bizarre moment, and then this big mistake from the number 53 machine. Had to do a quick flick spin, did William Lowing, who was right at the pointy end in that 3rd place fight early on in the race, but dropped back after that mistake there towards the tail of the field. But it was continuing out in front while all the action was taking place behind. These two could not be separated all race long. There was a mid-race caution period, and on the restart, the battle continued.
Caleb Bellack was the reason the safety car came out. Then when the greens came out again, Williams made his move on Joseph Fawcett. And as hard as he tried, the 23 just couldn't get past one of the widest Formula Fords you'll see at Winton Motor Raceway. The ACM Finance car just parked it wherever he liked to prevent any move from the 23. And just a car length at the end. In fact, it was just over a 1/10 of a second. And the same can be said for the 3rd position.
Yeah, absolutely. That was 13/100ths of a second.
Let's have a look, though, at our highlights from this race number 1 of the TFHI TO2 Muscle Cars presented by Maritimo. This big moment at the start there as we saw Diesel Thomas. Well, he checked up, didn't he, under brakes to try and avoid contact, and then ended up shooting off to the right of screen, and a lot of damage on that car.
Probably saved a lot of other cars having damage as well, so he was sacrificial lamb in that first lap. This was Josh Thomas earlier in the race. He had his first brake lock up at turn 7. This is when Webster and Gartner were behind the back. That was the second time. Then Andy Boulder, massive wide here coming out of turn 4, dropped in 2 positions. Would have another moment later in the race. Pulled up in front of Mark Bailey. This was Cam Laws, and I'm sure they're looking at that from a race control point of view on Graham Cheney in the IES Motorsports 51. Jared Hughes, we didn't see much of him. Once he disappeared, well, he was out there, but we didn't see much of him on screen. And in the end, went out to win by over 7.5 seconds. That was Danny Reedy after making a beautiful move at the final turn. Turned it to disaster. The second turn of the next lap. This was Davies and Webster. What a shame for Davies. That car was great in the first one today, the white 42 Thomas. This off only cost him 1 position as he returned to the track. Now, this was just before these two went to the dirt. Ramsey and Farr, maybe they were just missing being on the dirt. I don't know. I mean, they can tell us in that story. Like Hughes continued to motor ahead, and here's that moment. Watch the Farr car just turn into a speedway car. Watch the dirt here just pile on the top, and the crew going, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, they'll have a lot to clean out from under that car as well. I reckon that's going to sustain a fair bit of bodywork damage underneath. Luckily, it's all replaceable, right? You pull it out, you can replace it. So they should be able to get that car turned around reasonably quickly, but they've got no rest between races. But this is the talking point. Davies in 4th position, holding out a hard charge to Brett Gardner, and lots of smoke coming out of the car. We saw a lick of flames a little bit later as well. So I think it's going to be a fair bit of damage under that hood.
Now, a lot of work to do for the teams. Not so for Jared Hughes. Might be a bit of a polish, maybe a slight tweak to the car, but he was unstoppable.
Let's have a look, though, at our race highlights here. The Australian Super Tintops. The start was Pretty straightforward for a moment there. Have a look at Saint though. He drops back about 3 positions there as we see the Audi TT of Natoli drive around the outside. They all sort of give themselves a little bit of room, and I thought this was fairly clean, Dan, at this point, because anything could have happened there with Saint with just a bit of a slow start, potentially some tyre spin. Corey Gillette, well, issues mechanically with the car in the last race, but looks like he got that sorted, and he was a hard charger.
He was a hard charger, wasn't he, until the very last lap. This is the great battle he had with the production cars, the Audi TT of Natoli and the HSV of Holt. Once he got past them, the next target for him was Saint, and these two had a ding-dong battle for several laps. And they really did fight hammer and tong out there. There's a couple of sketchy moments, just like that one on the exit of turn number 9, but eventually made it sticky, went around the outside at the Gumtree, got the high ground, the inside line for turn number 9, and made that stick in the end. But he then had to fight as the number 11 came back through once again. It really was a great battle with the number 11, the RX-7, being so good in a straight line. But this was the big moment that ended the race. The what looks like a huge brake failure for Maloof. That was a huge hit into the tyre barrier. Fortunately, he has got out unscathed, but there he is. He's shaking his head. He's a disappointed man, as you would be with a damaged racing car. But the good news is he's out. He is okay.
Anything can happen. Let's have a look at some of the race highlights. We'll have a look at Brendan Hourigan once again, the silver bullet down the inside, taking it straight to Dylan Thomas. Says, mate, I've seen you around, you're a champion, but that's all right, so am I. I'm a champion legend car. Watch me do this around the outside. And he did get the move done early on, and we saw Dylan Thomas fight back for that second position a little bit later. Now, this was a very early incident on the first lap, and we saw that we pretty much lost 2 cars now. So that was, McCluskey was unfortunately one of those cars we saw in his first ever race meet.
Yeah, the restart got underway fairly smoothly, no major issues, but moves being thrown into 3 and 4. Again, your top 2, bringing Hogan at that point, starting to gap the field, but really being drawn back into the fold. Thomas threw that big right-hander out in the midsection of the track. He was under fire from, I think it was Hourigan. Trying to remember, it was Hourigan at that point.
Yeah, he was. Chris Spicer took a little bit of an excursion out there. It seems to be that turn 5 to turn 7 where everyone goes, you know what, it's a little bit loose out here. Let's go and mow the grass down. It's looking a little bit dry out there, as we saw just from over there. The budget car rental was 147, and he was holding on. Oh, Simpson did a big spin. It didn't look like any contact there. Just might have taken the corner a little bit too quick, and unfortunately couldn't pull that up.
There we go, Thomas rescued a good result, brings it home in P2, but the man of the moment, Ryan Pring, across the stripe for the checkered flag here in race 2.
Yeah, the man from ACT will be pretty happy about that, the apprentice mechanic down there, and you know, they make sure they get this car to all the meets. Very family-run little outfit there as well, and he was hoping to probably get up to about the 6 hour this year as well, try and get some more experience under his belt.
This is the highlights of race number 2, our feature event, Dan McCarthy. And it was on from turn number 1. But some big stories developed in this 30-minute combat.
Yeah, absolutely. There were several that fell by the wayside. But it was pretty clean early on, but this was the first of the talking points. Down at the sweeper, Lachlan Evanet in 3rd position, fell off the road, but he was able to recover, rejoin, cut the track, and take back 3rd position from where he went off the circuit.
This is him going after Fawcett early in the race, down into turn number 1. Evanet, great head driving from the 88 car to rejoin and not lose that position. Even with that shortcut, he managed to minimise the damage, pinching that right front in the early stages of this race. This is a big moment though. Really, that's actually going to hurt his back. The way that car landed, these cars are so stiff. Tough day for Tabitha Ambrose in the Pertec car. Father Marcus looking on down there, and then the second car would come into pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. Brad James came in just as the race restarted, so 2 Marcus Ambrose Motorsport machines coming to a halt within a matter of moments. But when the race resumed, the fight at the front resumed, as we have seen all day long. The fighting in the mid-pack was absolutely fantastic. We saw some great tussling throughout the field, and Evanet was one of the ones trying to improve, make his way back up through the order, and he was unable to make real progress. Fraser High was a late race retirement, but this was the big moment. The race leader, an error down at the penultimate corner. Joe Fawcett off the road and rejoined all the way back in position number 4. Late on though, our race winner came under pressure and he had to fight off Rowe late in the day and just about held on. And we can see our race winner there, Kobe Williams, who was a victor once again.